Hey, Kent and Jeff. How's it going?
Brian, you're out here blasting.
Hi, going really well. How are you?
Would you guys mind just muting? Sounds good. And turning your video off until we're done. Thanks.
There it is. Melissa, will you do roll call? Thanks, Rick.
Yes. Mayor Mark Sukup.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick Collins.
Here.
Councilmember Aaron Pearson.
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake.
Here.
Councilmember Brett Hansen.
Here.
Aaron, do we have any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Public comments. Do we have any public comments, Melissa? Doesn't look like it because I was going to say, I recognize every single person in this room, so I don't think it is. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the check register, the Timnath Town Council minutes, and ordinance number 5, series 2021, approving the Timnath Landing Plan Development Overlay Amendment, first reading?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Reports. Lisa, you said you had a report?
Yeah, just a couple of quick items. One is I just wanted to remind people that Aaron and I will be hosting a listening session on May 24th at 6 p.m. That will be here in the community room. The second, and Don, I'm not sure if you're going to mention this afterwards or not, but I've been hearing questions and comments from community members regarding what's going to happen now that Frontage Road is closed, and people have heard that Weitzel's going to go through, and kind of wondering on the timeline and things like that. So that's the second. And then the last one is one thing that I did not notice until quite recently, but somebody had commented on it, is that our cleanup day is this Saturday, which happens to be the same day as one of the neighborhood garage sales. And some people had commented about maybe in the future, we can just look at some of those dates to try to schedule it not on the same day as that. I live in the neighborhood and I did not kind of recognize that it was on the same day. So, but maybe just going forward, we can look at the different neighborhoods and what days they are having those. I know a lot of them are pretty consistent. So, and that's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before I turn it over to you, Don, thank you for all your great effort on CDOT and getting us new lanes, and the traffic flow is noticeably better. And so thank you to you and your team and getting that all done and set up.
Great, you're very welcome. And it was a long, arduous task.
Yeah,
but it did bear fruit finally.
It did. Thank you. And then I understand you've got a couple of comments you'd like to make from the engineering.
I do. The first one, I'll get to yours also, Lisa. But I wanted to give you an update to the council on the progress of the construction on Busgrove. You probably noticed we've had our share of moisture over the last month and a half, and that hasn't gone without at least effect on that project, which we're monitoring, if not daily, weekly. And we just had a meeting with the contractor today. And so I wanted to just give you some updates, because there could be, or probably will be, some decisions we have to make before the next meeting. So I'll lead with that by saying none of the decisions Aaron or we would make would be anything outside the contract that we have or within the constraints of the budget and the additional dollars that we have in contingency. So any decisions we make would be within that, obviously. Second, my assumption is that the priority of having that road open and paved before July 4th is still something that the council says that's a priority. So that is a question. If nothing else, I would love a head nod that says that still is a priority for everybody. Okay, and the reason I'm asking for that is that there are basically three options we have right now with the excessive amount of moisture that we've got. We can let Mother Nature run its course to dry things out to the point that we can work. If we do that, I think the chance of meeting the July 4th deadline is probably at best 10 or 15%. Okay. The second option is to go out there and aggressively help the drying of the soil. We'll till it. We'll add some additional amendments and things to it. Rick?
Mark, yeah, I had a question on it.
Well, wait, let him finish.
Yeah,
his
but
talk.
it relates to what he's talking about.
Yeah, let him finish.
Okay. So, and that has less cost, but it obviously also, it rains again and we've lost it all. The third and more, let's just say, certain option is to chemically treat it with cement/fly ash mixture, which we've done a lot. We did some of Harmony that way. Most of the developments around here have some of the streets that have had to do that for exactly the same reason, when you have over moisture and you don't want to wait. Okay. And so that's our third one. And that's almost 100% that we make the July 4th. But in order to do that, well, I would have to make a decision before our next council meeting in order to put everything in motion to get the materials, schedule the work, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted you to know that's what's in the mill. And so that's my blurb on that at the moment. Rick, question?
Yeah, the July 4th, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably going to be, our fireworks is going to be like last year. Stay at home, not into the park by the reservoir.
I will defer to
Because
Matt or
we've
Brian,
got
but
the
I thought we had
same kind, are we setting up?
Kim's the right one. Little face thing.
He's right there. Ah, there we go. Actually, because COVID guidelines have loosened up a little bit, what we're planning for this year is having the fireworks show, not having any activities at the event, but encouraging people to come and park and have their own little picnic area where they can watch the show, bring sandwiches, ice cream, whatever, listen to the pyrotechnic music performance along with the fireworks, and then head home. So we will be promoting an event, but it's more of a drive-in, come watch the fireworks and enjoy it, and then drive home event. So there will be folks out there. I think we can fit up to like 600 cars, and we'll start promoting that after we get through cleanup day. So it will be a little bit different than last year. Okay.
Go ahead, Rick.
It answers my question. I didn't know what the rush was if we weren't going to have people at the site. There's still restrictions. I know Weld County moved them, but I don't know if Larimer County moved all of them. It's going to beg the question, how do we keep people separated enough kind of deal? That's a whole nother issue.
So Don, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
Cost? I
cost-wise.
mean, I heard you. Can you say what cost? And I understand that you got to give us a ballpark, and I understand that we aren't going to commit you to the last penny on this. What I would like is if you give us a range on 1, 2, and 3.
I knew you were going to ask that. So one is just giving the contractor more time and elongating the project.
Yeah.
So, and almost a guarantee that it's not paved by July 4th.
Okay.
Okay. And it's little or no cost, but there probably would be some cost, but we would at minimum have to give the contractor additional time. So the whole project moves. Okay. The second one is probably a $40,000 to $50,000 cost for the materials and the work to do it. And like I said, if we do get moisture after we've done that, it's a throwaway. Okay. So that one is not a one that I'm really excited about either. The third one is probably more in the $140,000 range. We have used this before on we did a little bit of it on Harmony. We've done on others, and it's been it is almost a bulletproof subgrade prep. So, but it does cost. Yes.
Yes, Rick.
Yeah, facing those costs, I would say that, and facing the thing about how you keep people separated and for ice cream, it worked out great last year where people stayed at home and could stay in the neighborhoods and watch the fireworks. I don't think there's anything wrong saying instead of spending an additional 40 or 50,000, that would pay for next year's event almost. Let's just say we're not going to have people on site again this year because of the weather has sort of dealt us a bad hand here. It looks like a no-brainer to me, but I'm a no-brainer.
Yes, Aaron.
Well, I know that you can see them from your place, but the people down where we are, it's quite difficult to see them. They're not going to be able to see them from their yard. So then they're all going to be congregated at the community park and squished in like sardines there. So I do see some merit of having it, but what is the budget looking like? Are we on budget, over budget, under budget for this project?
We are on budget. In fact, I actually told Aaron I wasn't going to tell you this, but I will just because it's gravitated to this point. I think there's a savings on the east side when we get there that we didn't plan for, and that's in the probably $60,000 to $70,000 range. So there's an offsetting kind of number there, and I'll tell you also that I've had these sort of issues with moisture before. And they're a devil to deal with when you have this kind of weather patterns, and you get into a cycle where we're going to get costs from this contractor just before further than just time. But I can't tell you it's going to be $100,000. It's not that. But the whole project kind of just gets into this unpredictable long-term morass that generally costs.
And let me remind the council, what you indicated was we might go the route with the 40 or 50 or the 140 and end up with the same exact problem on
Yes.
July 4th.
That's exactly right.
And if you look at the weather patterns, which I've done, in another week or week and a half, it looks like another one of these things is coming in.
Right. And that's why if I had to guess, as long as we're trying to meet the July 4th, we're going to end up with more than likely the chemical treated option, which gets us there and past. So, and we might end up with that even if we wait, because we might get into late June or early July, still have the problem. and get forced into using chemically treated options.
I might be the Grinch, but $140,000 for the sole purpose of making it so people can drive on site to watch the fireworks display, when the fireworks display only costs us $80,000, seems ludicrous to me. And they can still jump on a bike, drive there. You know, there's almost everybody in Timnath is within a mile or so of that park where they could get on a bike with their family and ride over there and get on it. And I just think it would be frivolous for us to spend $140,000 for the sole purpose of making it so cars could come in and park there. And again, it's only for 600 people. We're still selecting a small section of people in the town. So anybody else that Lisa, anybody else that wants to talk, go ahead. But I mean, I'm not for spending $140,000 on this. And I think you're just asking for guidance from the council, right?
That is exactly right.
Okay, Lisa.
So you all know that events are super important to me. But at the same time, I also agree that the cost may not be worth it. Now, people can still get there from Main Street. Is that correct? Like, would people still have access?
They'll still have the same access they have now.
So we wouldn't be excluding everyone from going there. They could just go around a different way, might be a little bit more traffic or something like that.
Correct.
But we'd still have only 600 cars. So I would also lean towards kind of just waiting it out and see, you know, I feel like May tends to get more rain than, you know, once we get into June and things like that. So that would be kind of my opinion.
I mean, I think I'm siding with a similar sentiment with the rest of the council. The way I think about it is, you know, worst case scenario, it takes an extra hour for people to get out of the reservoir, which is very inconvenient, but compared with $140,000, it does seem like the cost benefit ratio is a little bit on the lower side. And yeah, maybe we do look at this in June and July and just, we got to get the project done and we look at it, but
Right. And this is exactly why I wanted to bring it up, because there's no wrong answer here for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and yeah, maybe it makes sense to ask the question again in another month because the weather's just not cooperating. We've got to get it done. But yeah, to shell out the money for the purpose of the 4th of July event, which I'm in favor of people being there and if they want to come.
It's just going to be one way in and one way out.
Right. And we can make sure that's known to the community so they know why, when, and they can plan on if they actually want to drive there or bike there or stay home. And we may not actually end up with 600 cars, we may end up with 300. And
right on.
So let me summarize where I think we are, and anybody here that I mistake, please correct me. You know, I think the whole council feels saddened that this has approached us. That $140,000 price tag is more, I think frivolous. I use the word frivolous. I shouldn't, nobody else did, but 140,000 is more than we wish to spend on this. In answer to your question, July 4th isn't a drop dead and have it completed direction from this council, and that you just do the best you can with what you got. We all good? Okay. I think that's the direction.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I needed.
Okay. I would just add on it, maybe communications as far as getting even, I don't think it's a waste of money to put out a little postcard saying, here's what's going on because of the rain and that. If you go in there, it's limited space and it's dirt road getting in there probably. Kind of deal explaining what's going on. So
not probably. For sure.
And if we rush this thing with the moisture, it'll just disintegrate it.
Yes, it will.
Great. Good discussion. Yes. Aaron, you had another thing you want to go ahead.
Well, it's actually sort of a timely topic. So we haven't talked about our other events for this year. I mean, we talked about it way back, I don't know, a few months back. But I think we were sort of putting some of the other events like concerts or those things, we put that on hold, just not knowing what the landscape would look like. So whether we don't need to talk about that today, but I do think that we should put it on maybe the next meeting's agenda, unless Kim had some ideas or something.
Yeah, so Kim, let's next meeting, you sort of tell us what the plan is and we can give you direction and stuff too on it. And just because we lose Timnath, we could still have something in the park, and something like that. So you put your creativity button on and sort of give us maybe some alternatives that we could discuss at the next town council meeting. Okay.
This would be a good place to give her some direction as far as saying, are we looking at maybe 2 events? And if we are, we sort of shake our heads, and that way she knows, can you get acts that would be willing to come in and do that? And if that's the case, we can get this thing moving instead of waiting. Because
I'd rather have her be prepared to talk to us. I don't want, to shoot from the hip. I don't know.
Okay,
Well, Kim,
fine.
I don't want you shooting from the hip. So if you're shooting from the hip, great. Let's not do it.
Right. I will say that we've been talking a lot about how to bring events back to the community in a way that is safe for everybody. It won't look the same as it did 3 years ago, but it's sure going to look a lot better than it did last year. And so how about, to your point, Mayor, I will come with much more detail with both our plans for July 4th, given what we learned here tonight, also for a larger late summer, early fall event that we've been planning and throwing some ideas around. And then finally talking about our holiday lighting festival and what that we anticipate looking like. So I will present more details, but know that we have been thinking about it and we're trying to find ways to get people back together, while also really being aware that there's still guidelines and restrictions in place. And we want to make sure that we're following those and keeping people safe.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll just answer Lisa's question just real quick on the extension of Whitesville. Right now, the calendar of events in the conversation we're having with the developer would have that open in late spring to early summer next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. And Lisa, you good with everything, and everybody else? Okay. All right. Resolution number 26, series 2021, a resolution authorizing the approving Timnath's participation in the Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program and authorizing the execution of the delegation and participation agreement and other documents in connection therewith. Matt, you must have wrote that. Aaron. Aaron.
Yeah, Mark, we actually have folks from Metro DPA to make a presentation, so I would just let them, if Brian can kind of tee them up.
Oh, okay. They're going to be on the video.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear, can't see.
All righty. Well, I have my camera on, but hopefully, at least you can hear me. The presentation
We can see you now.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen and do the presentation, or will someone do? There's like 7 slides that were part of the package today.
You guys could share your screen. That'd be great.
Go ahead and share your screen, Andrew.
All right, I'll do that. Screen 2. Oops, there we go. One more button. Hopefully you're seeing a title page that says Homeownership Down Payment Assistance Program.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, great. Mayor, and council, thank you very much for inviting us here. I'm joined here with Scott Riffle from Stiefel, who is our program administrator. My name's Andrew Johnston. I'm with the City and County of Denver. We sponsor this program. It is, I'm in the Department of Housing Stability in the city and county of Denver. And as part of bringing home ownership opportunities to the city and county of Denver, we have also been running this program since 2013. And this is a program, as the name implies, it is a metro-wide program. So it's not just for the city and county of Denver, though we sponsor it. It is actually available through the entire Front Range in any jurisdictions that wish to allow this program to be offered in their jurisdiction. Oops. Right, there we go. The program, as it operates, is legally called the Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program, which has got to be kind of a mouthful. But in 2018, we rebranded it, and it's now called Metro DPA. What it is it's much like other down payment assistance programs offered by other state agencies or other local housing finance authorities, or even other housing finance authorities across the country. And essentially, we overlay our government entity, if you will, as a local housing finance authority. And we enter into relationships with FHA, VA, and other Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac wholesalers. And we do 30-year fixed rate mortgages for anyone who wants to buy a home, and offer them competitive market rates, and then offer them down payment assistance ranging from 3 to 6% of their mortgage amount. We do this for people who are have incomes up to $150,000 of qualifying income, which is a little more than other programs. And it's for purchasing of homes only, no refinances. Oops. Currently, we have several other jurisdictions currently approved to offer this program in their jurisdictions. Here's the list of those other participating jurisdictions. If you'd like to also have us offer this through lenders in your jurisdiction, we'd love to have you on this list. Oh, this one surprised me. Sorry about that. I got a new presentation this week. This program is a self-supporting program. It's not utilizing any federal money. It's not using any state money. It's not using any tax dollars from Denver, and we're not asking for any money from your town either. What it is it's a self-sustaining program where essentially we're using the ability to, as a local housing finance authority, to give market rate interest rates to people who want to purchase a home and get the down payment assistance. So they are the typical people who use this program are people who qualify in every other way for a regular conventional FHA or VA loan. They're just missing the down payment assistance. So I was looking out just before this meeting on rates today. And for instance, if you go to a couple of different banks I saw online, they had interest rates of about 3% for a 97 for an FHA loan, where you still had to give 3% down payment assistance. Today, our program's interest rate for an FHA loan was 3%, plus you also get 3% down payment assistance. So it's a very competitive interest rate that this program offers. We're not asking for any funding from your town. We're not asking for any staff time or anything of that nature. We are asking for your authority to allow us to offer this in your jurisdiction, because we are, as a sponsoring jurisdiction, Denver has only jurisdiction in Denver. And though we want to share this as much as we can with other folks, it's only if you allow us to come into your jurisdiction to offer this that we can offer this program to your citizens. So that gets us to what we're asking for today, which was that resolution with the very long name. I believe that came from us. So sorry it was so long. But the important piece here is that it provides options for homeowners. It's not a program for everybody. If you have a person who qualifies for a regular loan and they don't need any down payment assistance, this program doesn't fit for them. But this does help some people who qualify for a loan in every way, shape, and form, but they just don't have the down payment assistance saved up at this point in time. That's the typical person who uses this. Though we have an income rate that goes up to 150,000 or an income limit, the typical person, our average borrower who uses this program actually is $78,300. So for Denver, it's a little bit under the 80% of Denver area median income. Once again, I've talked a little bit about this, but we do use 30-year fixed rate mortgages as the first. Our down payment assistance does get securitized as a second mortgage with no interest, no monthly payments, and the second mortgage is actually forgiven 1/36 every month that they make a payment. So essentially, after 3 years, that down payment assistance second mortgage is forgiven, thus allowing them to build equity in their homes faster. They do need to meet all the standard guidelines for whatever loan they choose, whether it be FHA, VA, or conventional. Because we are acting as a local housing finance authority, one of our other benefits is that they get a lower mortgage insurance rate, which is a benefit. And we also think that home buyer education is very important for anyone buying a home. So we do have a home buyer education requirement. This is my last slide, and these are just illustrating some of our partners that we have engaged with to bring this program together. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I've got a couple questions for you, Andrew. So the education piece, is that something that people do online? Do they go to classes? I'm assuming with COVID, this all switched to an online type education program.
Yes, so the program, we've actually done online for quite a few years now. The fact that we've done that for a couple of years is great because it made it consistent during COVID. So there's online options, and usually if you go to CHAFA, if you're in Denver, they do have some on-site locations and trainings for people who don't have access to electronic media.
I'm glad you brought up CHAFA. So how is this different than a CHAFA loan?
It's a very similar in program idea. CHAFA is a state, right? So they're like Colorado Housing Finance Authority. Yep. We're Denver and acting as a local housing finance authority. There are some differences in the programs that they offer. I'm not an expert on CHAFA's programs, but one of the bigger differences is they have a second mortgage that for their down payment assistance, and it does require monthly payments and or is not forgiven depending on what you choose. They have a multiple of options. That's the primary difference between what CHAFA and this particular program offers.
Okay, so if you had, let's say that a realtor has a buyer and they're working with a local lender, they think they might be able to get through, and then the lender says, you know, it's just not going to work. You just don't have that down payment. You don't have anybody that can gift this to you. So how hard is it for that lender who's been putting in this work to be able to be qualified for your program?
Great question. We have, they have to be basically a correspondent lender with either US Bank or we have another servicer as well called Lakeview. And under either of those options, we have over 100 lenders that do business in the state of Colorado signed up underneath there. So it's a good chance that you already have your lenders signed up with this program.
Okay. And then with this income of up to 150, what type of price points are people able to purchase?
That's a difficult question to answer only because it's always based on many options. But here's what I will tell you is because, like, you know, depending on how many car payments or student loans or other obligations that they have, that'll also impact their ability to purchase a home. But I think our maximum purchase price that we allow under like FHA and whatnot gets up around 500,000. So that's kind of like your maximum.
Okay. Do you, in reality, do you see people up at that price point, or is it significantly less?
It's significantly less. I don't know what the average is off the top of my head, but I want to say on average, we're in the like 350 to 400 as like program wide over the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. That was one of my concerns in looking at this program. With us being a newer community, our price points tend to be higher between Metro District tax obligations that they'll have and just the cost of housing where it's at. It would be difficult to get in Timnath for under, gosh, 450 would probably be a stretch to get in here. So that would be my one concern with this program, that we would just be giving lip service to saying that we could do this when in reality it's not going to be beneficial to anybody because they're not going to be able to buy in. So that's one of my concerns with it. One other question I had, my last question would be so you said it's self-supporting, and how does it self-support itself? Is it funded by Denver, but you said it was funded by itself. Is that in the margin between the bonds that you're selling, or together when you sell it on the market as a group, these mortgages, in the difference of interest rate? Is that how it's funded?
Loosely, yes. There's no federal, state, or local tax dollars. Denver does not fund into it other than our staff time. We have about 3 or 4 staff members dedicated to this program. But essentially, it is the differential when we put the mortgages and put them into mortgage-backed securities and then are able to sell them forward into the market. There is a differential there, and that's essentially what funds the down payment assistance. It's very similar to when we used to do the single family mortgage-backed securities with PAB allocation. It's very similar to that concept.
Okay. Brett.
So you mentioned how you're self-sufficient, which I think is fantastic. I think that's great. One question I'd have is, does the city or county of Denver take any kind of a cut of that revenue? Is there any surplus that goes back to them? I'm just trying to wrap my mind around why Denver would be interested in a statewide program like this.
Yeah, well, we're not interested in a statewide program, so we're offering it basically along the Front Range. We started in 2013 when single family mortgage revenue bond program essentially collapsed on itself, and everyone across the nation was looking for another down payment assistance program. And this program became implemented and adopted nationally as a way to create down payment assistance. There is an opportunity for Denver to make some revenue off of this, but it's not a whole lot of money. Our goal is not to try and make revenue off of this. Our goal is to keep the program operational, support people who are trying to buy houses, and that's our main vision and goal. We started off with just trying to do it just in Denver, and then we were expanded to the Metro Mayor's Caucus. And as this program got to be more accepted, the lenders in the program actually have asked that we expand it a little more to make it a little easier for them to offer this opportunity to others.
Okay, thank you.
Rick.
Yeah, just one question. Is this single family housing only?
Scott, can you help me out with that question?
Well, is it condos or?
Sure. Each of the master servicers that Andrew uses in the program, Lakeview or US Bank, have their own qualifications or limits, but yes, it has to be a condo approved project 1 to 4 unit sometimes as a place. We follow agency guidelines most of the time.
So yeah, we do, you can do single family detached, condos, townhomes, and we also do manufactured housing as well in certain circumstances.
Yes, Aaron.
So as far as condos, then it would just have to be an FHA approved project, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yes, Lisa.
So if we sign this agreement, how do people find out about it? Like, do we have any role whatsoever as a community in this, or is this something that you all take care of? Or, because Aaron made a good point earlier. I just read there was an article in the Coloradoan saying that the median home price in Timnath is $524,000. So I think the number of people getting into any homes in Timnath under 450 or, and I think even that would probably be tight, very limited, possibly the condo, that kind of thing. But I guess what role do we have, if any, or how do people find out? How would this all work logistically, I guess?
Sure, and for a specific role, if what we've done with other jurisdictions, if you want to put a link on your website, you can do as simple as that. If you wanted to incorporate it into newsletters or things like that, other jurisdictions have done that as well, but we don't require that of you at all. What happens is that we have a very strong lender base right now, and also a very strong realtor base that know of the program. And then as they are engaging with different people, could be in your community or across the Front Range, they are aware of our program. And then when they see the right situations and counsel people who are purchasing a home, they give them the option. And that's how they find out about the program.
I don't know if it's helpful, but just a point of clarification, the program does offer what is known as the FHA high balance loan in those places that are very unaffordable as the day goes, but communities like Fort Collins and others, and that's roughly $590,000. Just for that question that was just asked.
Thank you, Scott.
Lisa.
Great, thank you. One follow-up question. What's preventing you? I know you mentioned that you have jurisdiction over city and county of Denver. What is to prevent a person looking to buy a house to reach out to you? Would they be prohibited from doing that if we didn't sign this, or would they still be able to?
So people outreach to us all the time to try to utilize this program. And if what we have to respond to is if they're coming to try and buy a home in your town, we would have to say, we can't offer the program in your town, would be our response. And we've had 2 or 3 requests as of recently. And that's kind of what brings us here today, is like, evidently there is a need. And for a program that doesn't have any costs or any obligations for you, we're happy to offer it if you're inclined to allow us to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So discussion amongst ourselves. Anybody want to make comments, or do you think you heard as much as you'd like to? Okay. Hey, Andrew and Scott, thanks so much for taking the time to come in and talk to us, and you obviously put a lot of work to it. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate what you're trying to do up and down the Front Range. So thank you, both of you, very much for the time, effort, and good thoughts.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Our pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Do I have a motion for resolution number 26 series?
Legal counsel question.
Yes, absolutely.
If we approve this tonight and there becomes some kind of a issue in regards to this program and that, which I don't think there will be, but it becomes an issue. All we have to do is pass something to take ourselves out of it as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and yes, and I haven't looked at the participation agreement. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm assuming that there will, well, if it doesn't have something that takes care of us, I will put something in that takes care of us, so.
I'm going to just make a comment, Brett. You asked a question. It was one of the questions I had, and the more I thought about it, I figured it out too. How they will make money, probably the biggest source is selling the servicing. And it's servicing goes at about 0.5 point on the loan. So they'll make money on that, which will help pay for Andrew and Scott. I mean, we all know nothing's for free. So I thought I'd get back to you on your question there.
I think you could also do a conditional motion that says we approve of this contingent upon review of the documentation by our council.
You didn't review the documents they gave us?
No, I didn't get the participation agreement.
Are we part of the participation agreement?
I think so.
If we
That's what I
sign it, we
understood.
would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm just trying to make sure that we've got an out if we ever needed an out kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and
Because they'll use this in advertising just like they used all the other
Exactly.
jurisdictions.
this was more, what do you guys think about this idea?
Yeah.
And I think we could do a motion that says contingent upon
So there was,
approval of the documents by council.
there was, just a sec, so they had that. So we didn't have. Okay, you didn't get given the participation agreement, huh, Lori? And you do not have it as we speak right this moment? So wouldn't you have reviewed that already, Lori?
Oh, it's a pretty simple agreement. I apologize.
It's only a 2-page agreement.
Correct.
Did you overlook that?
I did.
Okay. Let's do this. Let's, if you all are okay, let's defer on that. You tell me the correct wording, Lori. What I'd like to do is defer the vote on this, not ask for a vote. Let you read it. I mean, 1.5 pages, you ought to be able to get before we're going to close the meeting.
Yeah.
And then give us, if you see any concerns there, and then we put it up for a vote. Is that, I think we all agree with that. So if you could take a look at those 2 pages and then subject to your approval on it, we'll then vote, not that we vote yes, but we'll vote on it. And I think everyone here is giving me a nod. So that's what we're going to do.
Sounds good. Thank you. I apologize to the.
What am I doing?
I just want to make
Tell me
sure.
the legal part. Am I deferring, tabling?
Tabling, yeah.
Okay, so I'm tabling it for a little bit. Okay. I don't need a vote.
We should take a vote on tabling the motion.
Okay, so I would like.
I would like to offer a motion to table this until later in the agenda for final action.
Repeat all that stuff, resolution. So let me go. Resolution number 26, series 2020, a resolution authorizing and approving Timnath's participation in a Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program and authorizing the execution and delegation of participation and other documents in connection therewith. Do I have a motion to table this until review of
The
council
participation
later in this
agreement.
meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved and unanimous.
Thank you very much for your
You bet.
consideration.
Good.
Okay. Now you guys got to remind me to come back.
Well, we won't forget.
All right. Resolution number 27, series 2021, resolution approving an agreement with Colorado State University to conduct an air quality monitoring plan for the town of Timnath. Aaron, you're up again.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I think Matt's going to help me tag team this a little bit, especially if I miss anything. But we've been addressing this issue, well, since before I got here. We have folks in Old Town concerned about the quality of the air. As a staff, we don't have anyone on board who really has the technical expertise to make those sorts of assessments. What we have before us is a proposal from Colorado State in conjunction with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Those folks are online. They have a few slides, so maybe I'd stop there unless Matt wants to add anything. But they do have just a very brief presentation to outline their proposal. Maybe Matt, if you have anything to add.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just do a little bit of a history on it just so that folks have some of that background context. And Aaron's staff report was focused on these next steps. So, but to give the council a little bit of background in case you hadn't been close to this conversation. And I'll start way back, 1968, Dick Chin started the Alpine Cabinet Company in Old Town Timnath. So back when, you know, the old town was just platted and there's very few residents down there. So that's the start of the cabinet company. Over those years, folks have moved in, moved out kind of a thing. And in the mid, 2016, and a little bit there about that time, we started getting complaints from residents in Old Town about odors. And those, they were informal complaints at that time. It was just calls that said, hey, we smell some things coming from Alpine cabinets, and can you guys look into this? So at that time, we actually, we were also talking about oil and gas, and I won't go into that conversation, but CSU was helping with that. They have a very robust atmospheric testing equipment and arm department of the university, and they were helping with this oil and gas effort. So we actually tagged them in to help us, maybe take some samples in Old Town and create a little report of what their findings were. So in 2016, there was some testing done. There's these vacuum canisters. You open the canister, it pulls the outside air in, you close the canister and send it over to their lab, and they test it for a series of different chemicals. At that time, there were some chemicals that showed up, but they were very, typical as to what you'd find in the environment. And I'm not an expert in any of this. This is just me over the years being a little bit close to this conversation. So, and we have some folks on here, and they'll get into the details and they'll correct me on all the things that I've said wrong tonight. So. But then we didn't stop there. We felt like these odors were kind of mounting and getting a little more, there was more pressure around them. So the town decided in 2018 to actually do another set of sampling, as well as create an odor ordinance. And the odor ordinance was a way to measure the odors and kind of set some parameters for code compliance. And the town we can set ours lower than what the state does. We can't be we can't do more than what the state does, but we set ours to a threshold that was as low as we possibly could. And we've been testing since then periodically whenever we would receive a complaint or on a random sampling kind of days. So we've been collecting odor samples and not collecting them, but just measuring it with a device that the town's purchased, and we have certified users to use. It's the same device that the state uses when they do their odor sampling testing. So we go through that process. We've been collecting it, and never have we gotten to the point where they've met the threshold. This is Alpine cabinets where they've met a threshold of a violation. Nor in that time frame have they met a violation with the state air quality permit that they have. So they're below their VOCs. They have a permitted number of VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds that they can emit per year, and they're substantially below that. They're a third of what they're allowed to permit. permitted to emit. And then the odor component is below the odor complaints. So they're in compliance with all the state and the local authority. In 2019, however, we asked the CDPHE to take, and CDPHE is the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, to take a look at those sampling reports that we collected in 2016 and in 2018. And they provided a little letter memo kind of thing that said, we see that there are some volatile organic compounds here. They're present. And they've looked at how they relate to the potential acute and chronic kind of exposure and health hazards. They deemed it was pretty low, but also that the sampling that was done was not robust enough to give a very strong recommendation or strong position on that. So we're at the moment right now. And then last thing in the timeline, we actually, in 2021, just at the beginning of this year in January, we did an informational outreach session where we engaged with the residents in Old Town. We brought Alpine Cabinet, their ownership group in, and we had the state and the CSU folks. So we had the whole team was there. We're able to talk to the folks and give some of this background information, which I'm giving to you in a very small snippet. So with that though, we're at the moment now of the next step is, which we talked to the residents at the informational session. Let's gather some more data and see what that data shows so that we can have a better position on what is really happening. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Jeff, because I think Jeff Collette with Dr. Collette with CSU has a 5 or 6 slides, very simple presentation about what this proposal looks like and what the results will be. We also have Kent Carlson with CDPHE on, and these two are our experts in this arena, and they can answer the technical questions as well as give kind of what the results of this study will be and what our next steps might be. So go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. Let me share my screen. So hopefully you can see that now. So I just have a few slides to introduce what is being proposed as a bit more robust air monitoring plan. And before I tell you about what we would measure and how we would go about it, I wanted to summarize briefly the goals for this program. So the first of these is to look at air quality and impacts on air quality in the Old Town area versus other sort of background areas of Timnath. You know, there are a lot of sources of air pollution throughout the Front Range. And if we measure in Old Town, we really want to understand what's different about the air quality there versus another nearby location. And part of that is also to distinguish any air quality impacts that we do see, extra air quality impacts in the Old Town area, how those are associated with operations at Alpine Cabinet versus other sources such as traffic or things moving through the area. The second goal is to provide a more complete data set to provide to CDPHE, to Dr. Carlson and his colleagues of these air toxic compounds so that they can better assess risks of exposure for residents in the Old Town area over both short and long time scales, what's referred to as acute and chronic exposure. And then another key goal, and a little bit different from some of the earlier pilot measurements, is we really want to ensure that we target air monitoring during the periods of greatest odor and volatile organic compound or VOC impact from the operations there. So some of the past measurements were, just made at particular times that were convenient, but they didn't necessarily coincide with the periods when residents in the area were experiencing the greatest odors and the greatest impacts. So I have just 3 slides to kind of illustrate for you the 3 components of this measurement strategy. The first is similar to what we did on some of the oil and gas work before. This is actually an air sample being collected at Bethke Elementary during that work back in 2016 or so. We would locate one canister at a sort of background reference site, perhaps again at Bethke or somewhere else, and then one in Old Town. And each of these would, over the course of a week, slowly fill to collect air to compare at those 2 different locations. These concentrations of the 50 or so volatile organic compounds we would measure in these samples would tell us about the differences in air quality, the extra impacts in Old Town versus a reference site in the Timnath area nearby. And they would provide the key evidence that CDPHE would need to assess these longer term or chronic exposure potentials. The second approach is focused on higher time resolution monitoring. What we know from studying plumes in other environments is that they often will move quickly across the site, through somebody's yard, across an area. So we need to be monitoring at high time resolution, typically of minutes or so. So the second part of the strategy is to propose or to deploy these tripod mounted sensors that monitor, every 10 seconds or so, the total amount of these VOCs in the air. They're sort of a semi-quantitative measurement, but they help us see changes in air quality, especially if high concentration plumes come across the monitoring site. Attached to these are a canister like we use for the week-long sample that can be triggered to open when a VOC-rich plume crosses this sensor. And it fills in about a minute then, giving us a laboratory grade measurement of the VOCs, the air toxics in that sample at a much shorter time scale that's relevant for understanding peak exposure and acute exposure potential. And then the final part of the proposed monitoring strategy is to actually engage the residents and perhaps some of the Timnath staff as well to collect samples. We would provide them with these canisters. We would train them on how to use them. And they could then, when they experienced a bad odor episode, open one of these canisters to collect a sample that coincided with the sort of worst odor episodes. And these could also provide additional information for this acute exposure assessment that would be done by the state. So those are the slides I have to quickly kind of summarize what's being proposed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Brett, do you have any questions, or do you have any questions, Aaron?
Just when you have the residents doing the sampling, I mean, do you generally see pretty good correlation from essentially amateur taking data compared to your other sampling methods?
Yeah, good question. The sample collection is pretty easy to do, so it's not something that's easy to make a mistake as long as they follow kind of simple instructions. So we don't worry about that too much. There is always a risk somebody could, do something that might, contaminate the sample, intentionally or unintentionally. Normally, by looking at the composition of the sample, we can get a pretty good idea. So, for example, if a resident decided they wanted to go and open this next to the tailpipe of their car or something, we could see that signature in our analysis and know that it wasn't representative of the kinds of sources that we're looking at in the area.
It would look like a very different chemical.
Yes, a different mix. And we have practiced having residents in other communities collect canisters, and we've not seen any issues like that there.
Okay, thank you.
Being it's in downtown Timnath, right on County Road 5, there's a lot of car traffic coming through there. I assume that what you're looking for also present in car exhaust, or is that different?
Yeah, really good question. So we measure about 50 different compounds in these samples. One of the reasons we do that is so we can distinguish the influence from different kinds of sources. So we have certain compounds we use to identify, for example, traffic emissions. And there are other compounds that we know are associated with the solvents used for the finishing products at Alpine. So when we look at some of the air toxics, and benzene is a good example, one that's often closest to levels of concern, that does come from multiple sources. And so we have to rely on some of these other marker compounds to determine whether the benzene is mostly associated with just traffic, or if we're seeing an influence from, for example, an Alpine operation or other kinds of sources.
Because one thing I guess that comes to mind for me is there's going to be high times of car pollution around the Timnath Elementary pickup and drop off times. But I'm assuming this would probably be done during the summer if we approve this, relatively soon, so that then during the summertime we wouldn't have those peak times where all that traffic is sitting.
Yeah, correct. We could time it so that, and we can locate these too, so that they're in the more optimum location. So we may not be getting a lot of that background traffic.
Okay.
So Alpine Cabinets has been a cooperative party with this whole thing. And if we needed to place it maybe even on their property or something, we could probably figure out some location that actually makes good sense and it doesn't get a lot of conflicting results. Is that fair statement, Dr. Collette?
Yes, and one thing I forgot to mention, I think, on the monitoring slides is the tripod mounted fast measuring instrument also measures wind speed and wind direction. So when we see a plume of these VOCs hit that sensor, we can also tell the direction that was coming from. So as Matt suggested, if we choose the monitoring location strategically, which we would, of course, we could see when, say a traffic backup near the elementary might be a source versus Alpine or something else going on.
Okay, thank you. My last question just flew out of my brain, so.
Rick.
Yeah, I have a few questions and I don't know. This looks like quicksand to me. The state went through this 2 times testing down there. And now we're getting ready to do this. Has anybody, and maybe it's for our staff, did we contact Aspen to see what they think about doing the study that's in front of the council today?
Aspen or Alpine?
Alpine, yeah.
Alpine was a participant in the informational session. One of the outcomes of the informational session was to bring forward next steps. And the next steps that we discussed was further sampling. They have no concerns with additional sampling.
That's good. Yeah. Let me ask you, Professor, I appreciate that you're going to let us use your equipment on this thing, and reading the document. If we find out that there is an issue, what authority does Timnath have? Maybe I should ask the state there. What do we do? What happens then if there is a issue? More robust testing and we find out there's a problem. Isn't it a state issue?
I don't know.
We could assess whether or not there was health-based issues based on a screening assessment and then a more refined assessment if needed. But I think in terms of what to do, that would be maybe a Timnath decision. after we provide that conclusion.
If a business is, I would question that. If a business is operating and you found out on your earlier two tests that there was a problem, then it would be a state's responsibility, wouldn't it, to address that problem? Is this passing this issue to Timnath entirely? And then to follow up on that, you've got in there that if—
Wait, that's a good question. I'd
Yeah.
like to hear
Yeah.
Dr. Carlson answer that.
Sure. I guess some of the further steps after the consultation or after the assessment would be to consult with ATSDR and involve, I guess, other parties and maybe deciding what could be done with, the health assessment. Sometimes community participation and involvement is one of their paradigms. So, I guess we would go there first.
Is there any possibility to get state resources to help with this?
That I don't know.
Talking about resources, you put in there that this project goes on for a certain set point in time, and then after that, it says month by month, it might continue at $9,000 a month. What do you think the chances are that we'd have to continue this thing?
I think that depends on what we find in the measurements. I think the initial intent is we go out for 3 months to see what's there and then provide those data to the state. That was presented simply as an option in pricing should Timnath wish to continue it.
Anything further, Rick? Lisa? Dr. Carlson, you didn't get a lot to talk about. Do you have anything you want to add?
I'd just like to contribute that the original analyses looked at a very limited sample, like Dr. Collette and Matt provided number, 21 samples from 2016 to 2018. And this increased sample set will increase the certainty of what kind of conclusions that we can make. And in addition, those samples are spread out over a longer period of time. Before it was 4 days in 2018 and 48 days in 2016. Now we're talking about 120 days. So that gives us a little bit more certainty about making any conclusions in regards to chronic exposures. One component that we didn't assess last time in the 2019 health consultation involved odor. And this time we anticipate that there will be an odor component to the report where we'll compare values to odor thresholds that have been published in peer-reviewed literature.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you, in Windsor, there's a cabinet maker that does a lot of business, and I think probably more than the one we're talking about, right across from the school, Windsor Elementary Charter Academy. So what if we put all this equipment out there? What do we find out? I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing here for sure.
Can you restate that question to a point? Because I got
No, I'm just trying to say, where does it stop? The state has a responsibility to monitor these kind of things. They've done 2 tests. They've determined that there wasn't reason to go beyond what they've done. Now we're being asked to put in a lot more money, get more sophisticated equipment. It should be a state responsibility, in my opinion, not the town of Timnath to take it over. And is this going to be applied to everybody in northern Colorado as far as cabinet makers?
So Matt, I'm going to make a comment and you add to it. But I think let's get what generated this. So the Old Town people were pretty vocal for a period of time and hit up town staff. So town staff in a service-oriented manner said, you know, they tried to go out there and it seemed like the plumes had come and go and whatever else. And so it was a step back. How do we sit there and come up with, do we really have a problem or do we not have a problem with this? Is there a dangerous element in Old Town or is there not? And so no one's forcing us to do this. This is staff's suggestion based on consulting two experts in the area, Dr. Collette and Dr. Carlson, to what should we do if we wanted to come up with a conclusion on whether we have a safe environment in Old Town.
That's right on. Yep.
Okay.
Right on.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's talk about it. And Dr. Collette and Dr. Carlson, if you wouldn't mind holding on just in case as we discuss among ourselves, we might have another question for you. And first off, thank you so much for your presentation. And it was very concise and even a non-science person like me could understand what you're trying to say. So I appreciate, or what you did say. So I appreciate that. Okay, Council. Lisa.
So just to kind of piggyback on one of the questions that Rick had, but I have for you, Matt, is that if the results come back that the levels of VOCs are outside of what is considered to be safe and normal, does the town have any ability to do something about it?
I'll answer it, but you guys are the ones that are going to make that decision. So the town could do some things. We could work with Alpine Cabinets to come up with some solutions to mitigate the problem if it's deemed there is a problem. But that would be those mitigation efforts would be a question coming back to the council to answer. So if it was a matter of increasing some filtration or it would be a problem that they would have to solve potentially, but they're already, as council member Collins said, they're in compliance with the state's. So the state permit, and this is where Dr. Carlson can maybe clear this up a little bit, is what we're asking him to do is the toxicology side of the CDPHE. They literally are an advisory kind of function. They look at the health risks that are out there in the environment. The state permit side of things is a regulatory portion of it. The regulatory portion of it sets the requirements for what every for air quality, and I'm going to get all these things wrong, but this is what my understanding is they set the thresholds for what's allowed and not allowed. And if you're under those thresholds, that you pass your permit, you're allowed to keep operating. If you're over it, then they can come in and stop you from what you're doing until you get it fixed. So they're in compliance with that state permit. This piece that we're talking about now is us trying to get our hands around, is there a problem in Old Town where people are maybe exposed to something that is a health risk to them? They're meeting their compliance with the state requirements for the regulatory side. There may be a health side that isn't necessarily under that regulatory. So there's kind of these two arms that are happening. And if we, the town, wanted to remove or reduce some of those health risks, if they're found as part of this study, there could be mitigating things that we could do to help Alpine Cabinets, or Alpine Cabinets could take on themselves. And so that's those next conversations.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? So wouldn't you think that the regulatory side and the numbers that they use for allowing people to have those permits, do they not take into effect the health impact that those numbers have?
And I'll have Dr. Carlson fill that gap in, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, the regulatory side of things does take into account health-based issues when they're deciding those numbers, and also technology-based kind of limitations in monitoring and things like that. But there are additional compounds that aren't regulated in the formal sense that are also out there. You know, as Dr. Collette said, there's a suite of VOCs that are produced by a variety of things, and not all of those have regulatory limits. But what we can provide as you know, the state organization is a risk assessment that looks at those numbers that will be provided and come up with a conclusion as to whether or not there is a health issue. And that's, you know, it'd be similar to, I guess, the 2019 health consultation letter that we provided before. Did that make it a little clearer, hopefully?
Yeah, and would that also include, would you also provide recommendations to us as a council based on those findings?
Generic recommendations that we could do, but as Matt said, that there are other alternatives that might be more particular to Timnath that I think Timnath would have to, you know, entertain.
Okay, thank you.
Brett?
So Matt, so say we found that there were some mitigation measures that were needed that we implemented. Would we then need to repeat this test and expense again and several times, do you think? I mean, is that how this plays out probably?
It could be part of the follow-up is
Okay.
to do some verification testing. I would imagine that would be the appropriate thing to do, just to see if the mitigation did take hold.
Would it be starting over with the $36,000 for 3 months, or would that be we do 1 month for $9,000? And maybe Dr. Collette or Dr. Carlson can answer that one. For a follow-up test, would that be starting, having to redo the whole test, or would we be doing essentially an extension?
I think you would do an extension, and maybe, you know, once the problem was identified, if there is a problem and you knew what you were mitigating, you could target the monitoring in a tighter way that would be at lower cost to do some validation.
Okay. I mean, I'll comment that I think we're not trying to set a general precedent here. We're responding to a very specific issue and complaint and comment. I think it's worth $36,000 to check into the health and air quality for our residents. So I'll just comment with that.
Before we get going, we don't have any public comment on this.
No, I actually received a couple of emails that just said, thanks for bringing this forward.
Yeah, okay.
But no other public.
All right, before we went too far, I wanted to make sure. Let's just have general comment of everybody. So Brett started it out. Aaron?
I don't know how I feel about this, frankly. The amount of money to do the testing, and I don't know, Lori, is there any liability issues on the town if we were to do this or were not to do this?
I would say no, because of governmental immunity. So if they find a health hazard, we're not the actor. We've checked into the health risks. If someone feels that they became ill, they could try to sue us, but we haven't been negligent and we can't be sued for negligence under governmental immunity. So I think we are okay. It's a matter of how far do you want to go down the road.
I just don't know how I feel about this. I am absolutely on the fence.
Rick?
What does it cost to mitigate something if there's a problem for that company? And if there's a problem, it should be mitigated. But I'm just wondering, is that $20,000? Is it a $50,000 deal? We just don't know.
It could be $250,000 scrubber on there.
Yeah, because I know we've talked to the company in regards to even relocating that business somewhere else. We've gone an extra mile trying to do that if they want to, but I just see it as a slippery slope, and I appreciate what both professors are proposing here. But I just trying to figure out what our end game is going to be and how it wraps up, how it actually concludes. Because when we get these test results back, if they don't quite meet need for mitigation, the residents are still going to be upset. And if they need mitigation, I don't know if we have the authority to do it.
Lisa.
Yes, to all of that stuff. I think it's important to know that our residents are living in a place where air quality is good. But I do worry about the fact that if Alpine, I mean, multiple times have been shown to be within their, following the regulatory requirements, I worry about what do we do next if this shows something on what is not our own property, not our own buildings, and what role do we play in that or not play in that? I guess part of me is hoping that if we vote yes on this, that everything will just come back fine and we won't even have to worry about that. But I know that there's an option that that's not going to happen. So I'm also a little bit torn on that as well.
I think we're all torn. What was the meeting that was held that the Alpine owners showed up and there were some community members and you and I were there? Or was it just a general, we got an issue and would you come discuss it, or what? I forget what that meeting was.
It was an informational meeting is how we couched it. It was basically to summarize all the things we've done, but a little bit more in detail than what we talked about.
So it was an outreach to the community
right,
as
and
such.
we had all of our experts on there.
Yeah.
And so it was an opportunity to like get those questions out there, and the next steps, that's what we've tried to determine at that meeting was, what could we do? One, we need to really understand if there is a problem or if there isn't a problem, and what to do in either case if there was one or not a problem. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now, is do we know if there's a problem or not?
So I attended that meeting, and I'll tell you what, I'm torn like everybody here. I heard the Alpine people, very concerned, community-minded citizens that said we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on cleaning our air and checking it, and we've passed every CDC test that comes in, and we've done that. And then I've listened to some very intelligent, well-spoken people that said, we're getting fumigated and that we're concerned there's people having cancer here, and it seems like it's a higher sense of cancer here than anywhere else, and none of which it was one of those. It was really hard to listen to it because you had very intelligent people taking different comments and stuff on it. So I think, staff, Dr. Collette, Dr. Carlson and stuff sort of said, well, do we find out if we have a problem or not? And then going to you guys, well, even if we find out a problem, does that solve anything? And I'm really torn. I want to be responsive to the citizens of Old Town who believe that there is and are fully under the belief and that there's a problem there. But at the same time, what do we do if we find out a problem or not? And are we chasing good money after bad? And I don't know. I think for $36,000 for me, it's worth doing the test, finding out where we are and going. But I totally appreciate every single comment that's been made here. Lisa.
I agree with what you just said. If for no other reason, then the way I look at it too is that if that were me, if that were near my home, I would want to know, if for no other reason, then I can make the best decision for myself. So regardless of whether who are able to do anything, not able to, whatever, the people who live around there would have the information and they would be able to make the decision that would be right for themselves and their family. So I feel like I would want to know if I were that person. And I don't think the cost is exorbitant or anything like that. So I feel like it's something that we could do just so that they have that information.
Thanks. Rick?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with all the negative that I threw out there kind of deal, I'm going to support this. Because it's like if the chief of police there knew that there might be a problem in a house here and there were people at danger in that, he and his group would go in and try to take care of that. This has been brought to our attention now, and it's nobody's surprise. I appreciate staff. At some point, you got to go along with staff's recommendation, but I still want to be able to put out there in the universe that we don't have the authority to do this as far as what's going to happen afterwards. And it's a slippery slope. It's going to be more than the amount of money if I don't squawk now, because wait until it comes back and maybe 3 more months or maybe this, we need to put this much more in, or maybe we need to do this to alleviate this problem. And when the bills start going up, I'm really going to squawk. But at the front end, we've got to stop whoever's taking the beating down there and correct it. I am disappointed that the town isn't here, or the company itself isn't here to assure us that there's not a problem. I would think that I wish they had showed up tonight. And in fairness to them, maybe they didn't know that.
I will answer for that. I did send out on Friday or Thursday that we were having this meeting tonight. I didn't tell them that they had to come or not. They came to the informational meeting and they were very open. It was an open book. They're willing to participate in whatever needs to, like they've done, from their estimation, they've done over and above what would be required because they are a citizen of Timnath. They understand that component and they want to do the right thing. So this measure that we're talking about tonight was not so much focused at them. It's more focused at here's this program that we're trying to put in place, and really not, they're kind of neutral as to whether the program goes forward or not. So it doesn't affect them one way or another. They're going to continue doing what they're doing.
That's all.
Okay.
I was just going to comment that, I appreciate Rick's wanting to keep us focused on the big picture, but I see this as we are only looking at a simple data point. This isn't Congress or state legislature. It's much easier for us to pump the brakes on a program. And I think we owe it to a significant chunk of the town to collect the one data point, and then that may be the end game. We have the information out there and go from there.
Okay. Do you want to call for the vote?
Sure.
So I think just call for the vote and I'll read and ask for a motion to approve it.
Sure. Yeah, let's call for a vote.
So resolution number 27, series 2021, a resolution approving an agreement with Colorado State University to conduct an air quality monitoring plan for the town of Timnath.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It carries 5-0. Dr. Collette and Dr. Carlson, thanks for taking the time late at night on your own personal, and we appreciate you being here and giving us such insight.
Thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you. Okay. 6C, a resolution approving amendments to Timnath Town Policy regarding Timnath Reservoir, presented by Matt Blakely.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So we have been getting some feedback from residents that when we ran out of our 450 non-motorized annual passes, that there were some upset folks wanting to get those annual passes. And so we took a question to the Prost committee, staff did, and our Prost chairperson, Aaron Pearson. We asked the question, basically, do you, the Prost committee, think we should increase the number of non-motorized boat passes. Interestingly, we got a split response on that, although it was more weighted towards adding than it was to not. So it was like a 3-4 kind of vote, if you will. It was an informal conversation via email that I was having with the pros committee. So Chairperson Pearson and Brian and myself, we discussed our options, and we thought maybe a compromise might be a good way to go, is add a few more and incrementally increase the number. So the proposal in front of you tonight is being brought forward with the support of the pros committee, although it was split support 4-3. That we do increase with 50 more to start almost immediately, and I'm going to do a little change up on that, but 50 more to start now, and then 50 more pending those being exhausted on June 1st, and then 50 more on July 1st, pending those being exhausted. So there's an incremental increase over that period of time, up to a total of, I think I said 600 on July 1st. So that would give us an opportunity to kind of test that out, see what the demand is, and not just open it up wide open for full unlimited number. I've got in there pros and cons of each of doing it or not doing it. And from staff's opinion, in the management part of it, we think is actually better this way, because every time somebody came out there to the reservoir, they'd have to do a purchase for an individual day pass. And that purchase, that point of sale is a slowdown point, basically. So if you had a pass, you could just wave your pass and walk in. If you don't have a pass, you have to come in and go through a kind of a point of sale interchange with somebody out there. So I felt like that was probably our biggest hurdle, and we're trying to limit the delays for people wanting to get out there and get on the reservoir. So with that, my one change is instead of having these go into effect tomorrow, if you do, pending your review and discussion, if you were to approve it, I would ask that we make one conditional change, is that we move the start to May 17th on Monday at 8 a.m. That gives us a chance to get everything ramped back up and get people notified, so that the ones that have written in and called, we can let them know that that becomes available on Monday. It's still going to be first come, first serve, no special waiting list or anything like that. It was, we'll just let everybody know, and it's the same kind of approach that we had with the first round. I do ask for another 50 potential if we do run into problems where we get 600 and we're still pushing the envelope, and maybe if the council was so inclined, you'd let the town manager make the decision to increase it up to 650 potentially if we get to there. There was one other small change, is motorized boat. We just wanted to clarify that motorized trailered boats with trolling motors, as long as they operate above wakeless speeds, they are considered motorized boats. So that was one other minor clarification we made.
Hey, Matt, you asked for a change. I see on page 85, the write-up on the date. Is that all? Is there the date showing up in the actual?
It's not. That would be a conditional approval tonight, because I just discussed everything that I was planning on was it would start tomorrow, the first 50. So that's just not going to give us enough time to get people notified and get the system up and running. So that was my error. So we're just asking for this conditional approval, if you're so inclined, to have it be Monday, May 17th.
Just to make sure we're tracking. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bullet points that are on the write-up. Is those bullet points in the resolution?
The resolution includes, it does include the bullet points, yes.
Where is that?
On page 89. If you're talking about the bullet points saying the dates for starting or for the additionals.
Okay, great. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, discussion? Yes, Rick.
Have you thought about the possibility means you're going to open this up to 50 instead of first come, first serve? Have everybody apply between a window and say, if there's more than 50, then it's going to be a lottery.
We did talk a little bit about a lottery program. We were trying to keep it as simple as we could, but I think that
The
might for
advantage of
next
that
year,
is,
yeah.
one is getting the word out there. Two is some people have inconveniences, like they might be out of town at the time that's happening, kind of thing, and say, it's just going to be luck of the draw at that point, and then you can apply again in the next window if you can.
Right. And it's mainly the reason why I pulled back from that was just from the management perspective.
Okay.
It's like once we turn the switch on the website, we're kind of hands off. If the lottery system, the people are submitting a bunch of stuff, we're going to have to handle it when they go through kind of a process of selection and do that. That was just, it was just a
my other
management side.
question looks backwards. Of the 450 permits that go out, we track, don't we, how many times those people use the lake? So
do,
if
yep.
permit number 71, we know last year they used it 3 times.
Correct.
What do most people use that lake? Because I know when I'm out there on the property at Harmony, I just don't see anybody on the lake hardly.
Right. Yeah, it's like you say. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's pretty low. There are some individuals that use it almost daily, even when it's nice, and then there's others that get the annual pass and they use it a handful of times. So it's a broad range.
So I think you'll be fine with that in the 50-50-50. It's a good idea.
Lisa?
In the future, does the way that they sign up online, is there an option for a wait list or anything like that? Or is that a feature that could potentially be added in the future so that if more spots open, you kind of just go down the wait list, have them, sign up or something like that? Is that an option?
We could, again, I was going to try and keep our staff time kind of, under somewhat of control. It does take a lot of effort from many people. And I wrote it in one of my staff reports a month ago or so. There are a lot of people that touch this, and each one of these layers adds just more time and complication. And I'm all for it. And I think as we get a little bit more staff and a little bit more robust system, I think we could probably get there. But I think for this effort, I'd like to keep it in the same approach. If you guys are, but unless you tell me otherwise, and we can go the other route too.
No, I was just kind of curious on that one.
Okay.
Second comment is on the page you were just referring to, page 89, under B, it mentions that staff will monitor and the town manager may make modifications to the number of passes up or down. Could we just clarify in that point there that if it goes down, it will go down before people have purchased? Like, I don't want people to think that you had 600, now you only have 550. Like, are you cutting people off kind of thing? Which I assume we were not planning on doing that. But maybe just add that as a clarification since it mentions down.
Yeah, and I could remove the up or down, both of that. It's really going to be an up change. However, my thought could be that if we didn't get to the 550, in June, the June number, and we don't go to the July 1st, and but we needed a few more, there may be, we're going to offer 525 or 575 or whatever it is, but not, it's an easy thing to pull out of there. I'll make that change. It's just simple.
I just want to note to the council that when Matt and I have talked about this, and through the pros committee as well, that this this is, you know, it's a little bit of trial and error here as the town grows, and we're trying to do the best that we can for everybody to have access. And I think that trying this year will help us to shape where our policy should be next year. And as we grow by another couple thousand people, well, then they're going to have to, I think this is going to be an ongoing policy discussion with the reservoir until we get to a point where we're like, okay, now we are at the maximum number of permits that we can have at one particular time, and then deal with that. Maybe that then is a reservation system of, you know, we can have 100 boats out there at one time. But there's also stuff in the works to make sure that we're being safe for both the motorized boaters and the non-motorized boaters. So I'm sure you'll see more changes coming up this summer that we can really find where this balance between the motorized, non-motorized, safety, access, numbers are. You're going to hear more about this as time goes along. But we feel like this is a way that we can sort of test the waters on what the capacity is, and we're going to be able to gain a bunch of data this year from these passes that we can use for decisions in the future. The one thing that I think is going to be important is, like you mentioned, like Rick, about, you know, what is the number of times a person uses it. I know that Stacy and we just got some stand-up paddle boards, but my guess is we're only going to use them just a handful of times, and I'm guessing that's probably the average is, you know, somewhere in that 5 to 10 range. So we'll see, but thank you if you want to support this. Thanks to the pros committee, both the people that were in favor and not in favor. We hear what you have to say, but it seems like this is the right choice at this point.
So just so that we're sort of set here, Matt. So A-B is now going to be May 17th.
Yes.
There's another one about up or down. We're going to delete that.
Yep.
And there was, I thought, a third thing that we were going to change on this Exhibit A.
We talked about wait list and we talked about the lottery, and that was more of a question for the council, I think.
So I think we'll pass. I'm looking at everybody. We'll pass on the lottery. What's the other one?
Wait list, for if you wanted to get on a wait list and then be called in that order back.
On
If we ran, so let's say we run out of permits, and then when June 1st hits, the first person that called in, they would be, you know, on a wait list.
So let me ask a question. Why the phase in? Why don't we just start at 600 on May 17th? I don't understand. I mean, if 600 works in July 1st, why doesn't it work on May 17th?
Well, do you want to take that? Okay, go ahead.
I think the reason we phased it was we wanted to make sure that we didn't overload it. And we had the opportunity that if we released more permits, so this is more than we released last year. In the initial policy was more than we released last year. So we wanted to make sure that if in May we sold 50 more permits and then we saw a huge uptick in usage on the reservoir, and then we had problems like we do sometimes with motorized boats where there's just not enough capacity for people to get out there, that we didn't just continue to sell passes to people who weren't going to be able to use them.
But this exhibit doesn't give you that authority. So this exhibit says you must do 550 June 1st. You must do 600 by July 1st. I hear what you're saying. I don't have any I don't care what the answer is, quite frankly, but I want to be very clear. If you've got this system, it just seems like let's do 600 and go on. If you're saying we don't know if this is going to work, so we're going to put our toe in the water and try 50, and then if it doesn't work, we're going to stop there. I'm fine with that, but then we need to change this policy.
I think that was the intent of letter B, was to allow the town manager to have that discretion to cut it off. So if we got to 500 and then we started seeing use problems, the town manager would then at that point be able to say, okay, we're going to stop it. We're going to revise that limit down to 500 and stop until we are sure that the usage can be under control.
That was my mistake then. Thanks, Brian.
Is that what this says?
That's what it says. I mean, that's my answer to Councilman Member Lake was incorrect. So yeah, that's where it's giving the town manager that authority to stop. And maybe it shouldn't be up or down. It should be that, if there are problems, then that we can cut it off at that point. So
Does everyone
apologize
feel
for that.
Good with what's there.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Just stop.
Reassess and drop it.
And I think that approach was kind of in response to some of the people on the pros committee's opposition to this, because there was a concern that if we just, one of the options we talked about with them was that we would just leave it like wide open, see how many we could issue for this year. And people had concerns.
And I'm fine. I just want to be clear what we're
I
saying
agree.
so that what we're saying, it doesn't come back and bite us. So
Right.
all I care about is that it's clear, and I'm not so certain that it's clear right now. So, staff will monitor the situation. Okay, great, but that doesn't do anything. Town manager may make modifications to the number of passes as deemed necessary in consultation with the staff. In what we really saying is the town manager can stop at any preceding level upon consultation with the staff.
Yep, that'd be the perfect change. That would make it much more clear.
You got it, Lori?
Yeah, that was the intent.
I know. That's what I thought, but I was trying to get there.
Because if we got to
make sure I understood.
If we got to 550 and things were not working well at all,
then we'll stop at 550.
Then we'll stop at 550.
Yeah.
Yep,
You
that's
know-
right. That's right on. And that was my mistake in saying that.
That's and no mistake. I just want to make sure that we're all clear with it. So, Lori, do we make a motion to amend this first and then a motion to pass the amendment and the policy, or how do we go about this?
You can go ahead and do a motion with an amendment
Okay.
right now, as we just discussed. And Rick said, okay.
You can do it? Okay.
Awesome.
Rick, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to approve, or do I have a motion? Yeah, a motion to approve resolution approving amendments to the Timnath Town Policy regarding Timnath Reservoir.
Correct. Yep.
And that clarification that the town manager has the ability as this is phased in, working with staff to stop the program, stop phase
Correct.
And wait, no.
Oh, sorry, not quite.
No. And delete the term up or down.
Oh, right, yes.
up or down
Yep.
used in their regarding.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Excuse me. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron, and
Thanks
thanks to the
pros
group,
committee
and
and
thank
the
you,
staff.
Matt.
Thank you.
It's a tough one. How do you keep it safe and yet make it so people can use it?
What you do is you put places out. That's anybody who owns a boat knows.
All right.
Mayor, at this-
Resolution.
At this time, Mayor, would you like to revive the motion that we were looking
I
at?
thought I'd do
for-
that at the end.
All right, got it.
Resolution number 29, series 2021, a resolution to hire a legal assistant for the town attorney. Lori Graham.
Yeah, I would like to respectfully request the council to allow me to go forth and hire an assistant. I promise that I will never not read an attachment again. If I have an assistant, I apologize for that. I think I was thinking that the participation agreement should be 300 pages because that's all I've ever seen. So anyway, I think it would be extremely useful and helpful to me. I could use some assistance in just booking meetings and legal research. I've been asked to do several code rewrites at this point. Our HR policy, our ethics code. I got a request from the police recently. I've got some investigation that I'm currently conducting. So I'm a pretty busy lady. So if you would approve that resolution, I would be very grateful.
Any discussion? Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved. A
Wait,
resolution to
let's
hire a
see, yeah.
legal assistant. Yeah, I was going to read it off. A resolution to hire a legal assistant for the town attorney.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of Resolution 29, Series 2021, a resolution to hire the legal assistant for the town attorney, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I don't know, do we have to come back and vote to untable that motion, or what do I need to do
No, I think
here,
what we
Lori?
would just say is we'd like to revive the motion at this
Okay.
time. The town council has reviewed the delegation and participation agreement.
Okay, so I'd like to revive resolution number 26, series 2021. I'll read it. A resolution authorizing and approving Timnath's participation in Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program and authorizing the execution of the delegation and participation agreement and other documents in connection therewith. I think Council Person Collins asked about the participation agreement, and we'd like your opinion on, is it appropriate document for us to participate in?
Yes, I didn't see anything that gave me any pause in the agreement. We could add that we could have the ability to unilaterally terminate the agreement because they have the right to terminate if the program is ended. However, they can only operate under a delegation of authority. And what we could do to just simplify things is withdraw that delegation at any point.
Okay. So you feel good about?
I feel
the-
perfect. Yeah, it's
Great.
fine. Oh, and it also says we won't pay any money under the contract. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion for resolution number 26, series 2021, a resolution authorizing and approving Timnath's participation in the Metro Mortgage Assistance Plus program and authorizing the execution of a delegation and participation agreement and other documents in connection therewith? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0, resolution number 26, series 2021. Any council persons have anything they'd like to bring up? Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, the meeting is adjourned.